We only like to talk about all the smart strategies and tactics, but never just stop doing stupid.
You can do all the external stuff, but like if you're not doing the internal work, like do the external stuff, it doesn't matter.
Whatever you do, be deliberate about it. Be strategic about it. It's okay, again, to put your head down and grind for a bit, but do it deliberately. Do it understanding that's a season that can come to an end, and what are you looking to get out of it? The bigger risk is not doing anything. That's how you guarantee failure. I talked about the concept of being a time billionaire. A billion seconds is about 30 years. So anybody that's like 50 or younger, you're a time billionaire. And that is your most valuable asset. You're actually wealthier than Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett, I guarantee you, would give all of his $140 billion back to be your age, Justin. What that says is time really is our most valuable resource. We should be much more focused on investing our time well. Your life will expand or contract in proportion to your courage.
Freaking facts, man. All right, we're back. I'm super excited for today's episode. We've got a guest who, if you have Twitter, if you have X, whatever you call it, you have to follow online because I found him very recently, and I think he's got some of the best content out there. I'm very, very picky with who I follow, so I'm not just saying this to say it. And I'm really excited to get into an awesome conversation with him today. We got Kevin Dahlstrom on the podcast, man. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for inviting me. Based on the discussion we were having before we hit the record button, this is going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm stoked, man. Well, quickly, can you just give the people a little bit of background? I know you got a new company we were talking about. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've done a lot, been around for a long time, so I'll try to keep this brief. But I'm 55 years old. I live in Boulder, Colorado, with my wife of 28 years. I have two daughters who are in college, so we just became empty nesters. Grew up in a small town in Texas. My first job was bagging groceries at the local grocery store. Did not come from high means, very meager upbringing. My ticket out of small town Texas was an academic scholarship to the University of Texas. That seemed like going far away at the time, which was like 100 miles down the road. Studied engineering in college, realized by the time I graduated, I didn't want to be an engineer. So started my career in management consulting, but pretty quickly, I came out of college around the time that this thing called the internet was starting to take off. And turns out it was a big deal. And sort of kind of summarize, a pretty long career. I think one thing that's kind of unique about my career is I spent about half my career in corporate America. So worked my way up to the top in the marketing ranks, was a chief marketing officer for 3 different public companies. One of my claims to fame is I'm the only chief marketing officer who has rebranded 3 public companies. So branding is really my specialty. But I've also spent the other half of my career has been founding companies. So I've founded, depending on how you count it, 4 or 5 different companies. I've hit for the cycle, meaning like I've had everything from spectacular failures all the way through an IPO. And then I guess maybe the most noteworthy thing about me is in 2018, at the very peak of my career, earning a 7-figure salary, big prestigious job, I realized that the life I had created was not the life that I wanted. My definition of success was a little different. And so I hit the reboot button. That's when we moved from Texas to Colorado. I'm a very passionate rock climber. It's actually probably how I spend most of my time these days. So moved to Colorado in 2018. I refer to myself as semi-retired. If you followed me around day to day, you probably wouldn't think I'm semi-retired, but I have control of my calendar, which is really the important thing to me. And then, kind of bring things full circle to how you discovered me during the pandemic, during the lockdown phase of the pandemic. I started writing on Twitter, which is now X, and I've always enjoyed writing as a practice, and that's kind of how I view it. But it's been amazing how that thing has kind of snowballed, and I've met amazing people. Frankly, it's changed my life. Some of my best friends now have come from that app, Twitter, and it's opened up incredible opportunities. So yeah, so I'll pause there. I've done a lot, I've seen a lot, and my whole shtick is, I've learned everything the hard way so that young guys like you don't have to.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your wisdom, man, because like I said earlier, I'm very, very picky with who I listen to and what information I let into my brain. I think Kevin's got some of the best, we're going to go through a lot of his tweets today, but I think he's got some of the best content I've seen in a long time. And I'm really excited to just dive into this because it's going to sort of go a little bit everywhere. But like Kevin said, with his own story in 2018, he hit the reboot button. I think that's actually really hard for people to sort of maybe even say like, hey, I'm lost, I need to reset. just because they've spent so much time, just living a certain way. And I think it's awesome that, you're very open, just being like, yo, this is what I did. And you've helped so many people. I'm sure you probably helped a lot more people that haven't reached out to you. And I mean, you got a big following online too. Again, I just think it's awesome. And I really appreciate you for coming on. So let's get into the good stuff, shall we?
Absolutely. Yeah. Tee me up. Let's go.
Let's go. Okay. So I'm going to start with just one of your tweets and we're going to get into the one that blew up. But like we were talking about beforehand, when it comes to, again, admiring people that you admire, we both have this similar belief, and this is why I resonated with so much is, you should be very careful with who you listen to, who you emulate, because just because they might be successful in one area of life, business, for example, or relationships, whatever it is, their health, doesn't mean you should listen to them. You should look at the whole package, their whole life. And I think that's so important, man, because so many people don't do that. They just look at one area and then it just affects so many other things in their life. And you gave an example of Laird Hamilton, who I also think is awesome and a badass and obviously a great surfer. But can you just tell us a little bit more about what you mean in this instance and how you sort of came to that conclusion yourself?
Yeah. No, this is a super important principle. And, I often say, be careful who you emulate because you just might pull it off. And as we all know, the people that society puts on a pedestal and defines as successful are typically people who are wildly successful on one dimension, right? So maybe it's Elon Musk, who is the wealthiest person in the world or the best entrepreneur in the world, or, maybe it's LeBron James, who's an incredible athlete. Warren Buffett is, incredible investor. There's definitely a lot to be learned from those people at the extremes, but you have to really, I think, take a look at not just that one dimension of their life, but their entire life and ask yourself, is that really what I want? And the example I like to use is, Elon Musk himself referred to his own life as a tortured existence. So I think a lot of people look at Elon, they're like, ooh, I want to be successful like Elon. I want to be a billionaire. But do you really want a tortured existence? I think most people don't. I mean, most of us, if you're like me, yes, I want to make money and live comfortably, all of that. But I also want a great life. Like I want a stable marriage. I want healthy relationships with my kids. I want to be physically fit. I want to have passions outside of work. I'd mentioned Laird as an example because he's someone I've followed for a long time. He's a little bit older than me. I actually had the opportunity to meet him on Kauai in Hawaii. And, none of us are perfect, but he has always having a multidimensional life. He's always made that a priority. And that was really the catalyst for me rebooting my life. Is like, I had checked all the boxes that define success in the business world, and yet I was less happy than ever. And so I rebooted and built a multidimensional life. And as you pointed out, unfortunately, most people don't do that. So I don't know. Are there people who you think of, or when you think about like someone that has a whole life worth emulating? Because the irony is folks that have like great multidimensional lives usually aren't famous. They're kind of running under the radar.
Yeah, no, for real. I was telling you this earlier, like how I know a lot of very successful people and I wouldn't exchange lives with 99% of them. I would say someone who's more well-known and who's become a friend and mentor is Jesse Itzler. Are you familiar with Jesse?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was literally just hanging out with him last week and I'm going to be seeing him in a month. And like, I think he does a kick-ass job. Obviously he's pretty well-known, but he's been very successful in business. He's very intentional with his time. He has a lot of fun. He does hard things. He's got a great family. He's healthy. So I've learned a lot from him. Just like, I'm like, dude, how do you live your life? I want a little piece of this. And so Jesse's one for me, but yeah, no, it is people who aren't really well known. And obviously I think at least for my generation and maybe even definitely younger, a lot of influence is had on us because of social media. Like you're just seeing these people constantly, these people who are well known. And, if you're constantly surrounding yourself with these people, whether it's on the phone or a podcast or whatever, like you're listening to their information, it's going to affect you in some sort of way. So I think unfortunately for the most part, it does have I don't want to label it as a negative effect, but like you were saying, it has an effect on people where it's like you wake up one day and you're like, oh shit, like I didn't actually want this. And I think, at least again, from my generation, a lot of people don't even define what they want. Like they haven't even gotten that specific. At least a lot of my entrepreneur friends that I am close with or friends with, they're like, I want to sell my business. I'm like, cool. Like for how much? And they're like $10 million. And I'm like, why $10 million? And then they can't answer it. And I'm just like, well, like if I gave you $9.999 million, like would you be upset? And they're like, no. So I'm like, why the 10? Like now what are you going to do? And now you got to keep digging and digging, but they haven't even figured that out for themselves. So most people unfortunately are just aiming at a target they can't see. And we were chatting about this earlier too. It's like, we're not taught this stuff. So I'm just like, bro, like we got to start talking about this more. That's why I think it's awesome that you're talking about it more. I mean, I think you even one of your tweets today that we were going back and forth on was something very similar. So yeah, man, I just think it's really important for sure.
Yeah. You mentioned something really important, which is defining what I call the ideal end state. Like, what are you really building towards? And you mentioned, like, a lot of people will say, well, I want to be worth $10 million. And a useful question to ask to kind of dig deeper is, to what end? Why do you want $10 million? Well, I want to be able to buy this or have this, like, be secure and not have to work or whatever. To what end? So that
Yeah.
I can then, have more free time to pursue the things I really enjoy. To what end? And you keep asking until you get down to what someone's really after. And the reason that's important is because a lot of times you realize at the end of that exercise, you don't need the $10 million to get the thing you really want. I developed an exercise years ago called the ideal end state. It's a very simple exercise where you literally just get out a piece of paper or use your notes app on your phone and bullet point out, what would your ideal life look like if there was no constraints? Like, who would you be around? How would you spend your time? Where would you be? And so on. And it's not a list of accomplishments. It's a state of being. Like, things on my list are things like get lots of sunshine, train toward climbing 514. I'm a rock climber, so I want to train toward becoming better. I've gone through that exercise with a bunch of people, and in every case, it's been enlightening for a couple reasons. Number one, it identifies gaps between what you say you want and your behavior today. In every case, when I've gone through this with someone, they're like, oh, wow, like, why am I doing this if that's not even on my list? Why do I have a $1,200 a month car payment if drive a fancy car isn't on my list? And I'm not saying you shouldn't strive to drive a fancy car, but if that's not on your list, then that's an incongruency. The second thing people realize is when they look at their list, most of what people are going after doesn't require $100 million. You don't need Elon Musk type wealth.
I was just about to say that. Usually, like, you do these exercises and it's like, oh, I actually don't need as much as I think. And again, as someone who does, like, I'm a car guy, I do like nice things. Like, I very much agree. Like, you should do this exercise, but then you realize, like, oh, I can still have an awesome life and I don't need this $10 million that I just made up in my head because this person says it's the amount of money you need. Like, you need a lot less. And it's like, I don't know. I love that. I might be stealing this exercise from you if that's cool.
Yeah, well, one thing that goes hand in hand with that exercise and what we've been talking about is the concept of minimalism. Minimalism is a very misunderstood concept. Most people think when they hear minimalism, they think, oh, that means like living like a monk and denying yourself of every pleasure, not buying anything. And that's actually not at all what it is. Minimalism is simply asking of everything in your life, does this bring me to true joy? And if it does, by all means, keep it. If not, get rid of it to make room for things that do bring you true joy. So in a way, it's like a form of hedonism where you're saying, like, I just want a life max, man. I want to get rid of the shit that doesn't matter to me, that I'm only doing because society told me to. And I want to max out on the things that really matter to me. So for example, for me, rock climbing is kind of the focus of my life right now. That's why I live in Boulder. And anything that's not like rock climbing, family, or the few business things I say yes to gets a hard no.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think if y'all need to replay that because what he just said there was just like, again, it's taken people lifetimes to just learn this kind of stuff, and I'm still learning myself. But I think it's so important because one of my mentors taught me this a long time ago. It's not like we really want the fancy car or the nice house or even like the family. We want the feeling it's going to give us. And so I think too, it's just like understanding that and understanding your own psychology is super helpful because once you do that, you're just able to, you said life max more. And I think that's really the end goal, right? It's like, if you really get down to like the end stuff, it's like we're doing all this so we can feel good about ourselves when we're by ourselves, when our head is the pillow, we can say we're having fun and we're having a good time in this life. And I think when you're 85 or wherever, how old you get, if you can just look back and say like, I lived a good life, like you won. And that is the goal. I'm actually writing a book on this whole topic right now. So I'm really excited to pick your brain some more, but it's just like, it's crazy again, how we're not taught any of this stuff, man. So many people just like, I was just hanging out with Jesse again, like I said last week, and we were talking about business. And again, business is really important, but it's just one slice of the pie. And when I first met Jesse, he said something to me. We were talking about work because that's what I guess the conversation was on. And the topic of, again, being surrounded by very successful people came up, and he was like, dude, I know a lot of entrepreneurs who are very successful, like sort of what I was saying earlier, but he's like, they're really good at business. He's like, but I'm better at life than them. And I was like, this guy gets it. I need to learn from him a lot more. And again, he's still accomplished a whole lot, but I think it's just really important to understand, like, just because you might even love your job, and I really love what I do, like, that's just one little piece of the pie. And unfortunately too, like, a lot of people who do really get engrossed in their work, like, they can't even like imagine what life is like without it, which is just like, I think there's, again, I love that for people because I think there is a lot of entrepreneurs who have changed the world, but like, there's still so much, like, you could have been like, I just got done playing tennis. I just had a tennis lesson this morning. It was fucking awesome. I love that. It brings me joy. Now I'm doing a podcast with you, and then I'm going to go work. It's more this afternoon. I got dinner with my grandparents and the rest of my family. But it's like, those things are important to me, but just defining those, not just totally getting sucked down on the work stuff. They've never even like explored the other amazing things that life has to offer. I'm just like, dude, I get you really, really love your work, but you haven't even tried this, and this
Right.
yet.
They don't even know what
And
else is
that,
out there.
oddly enough, will actually make you a better entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a problem of identity. And especially among men, this becomes a problem where work becomes your whole identity. And as you said, a lot of people don't even know, they think they're winning because they're getting positive reinforcement in their work, they're making more money, whatever, but that usually doesn't end very well. And so one thing that I talk about a lot is optimize for your camera roll, not your bankroll. And so that was a very conscious decision that I made, when I rebooted my life, was I could have continued to rapidly grow my bankroll, but it wouldn't have changed my life as much as gaining control of my time and having amazing experiences with loved ones. And I say something similar to Jesse, is like, there's lots of guys out there who have more money than me. In fact, my friend circle, most of them do have more money than me, but I'll stack my camera roll up next to anybody on this planet.
I love that.
I've life maxed for enough years now that I've had all these amazing experiences. And guess what? Most of those experiences don't require much money.
Yeah. Jess also told me this too. And this is sort of like, it threw me for a loop when he first said it. And he was like, I used to be in my 20s and 30s. I was just go, go, go. I was building Marquee Jet and all of his other businesses, right? But he's like, what I realized is when I started having more fun, again, it made me a better entrepreneur, and I started making more money. And I was like, what? And then, but it makes total sense after you say it out loud. And they actually think, the thing he actually said to me too, he was like, if I actually worked a little bit less, and I, instead of having that 5 p.m. meeting, and I took time off to maybe go for a walk or a run or a sauna like he loves to do, he's like, that would have, again, made me a better entrepreneur as well. I would have had more energy. I would have been enjoying life more. And I think that's just, it's something important to think about. And yeah, man, I love the camera max versus the bankroll max. That's awesome. I've never heard that before.
There's a ton of false urgency out there. And what I found, which is similar to what Jesse said, is that consistent work over time usually wins. It can also be true, like when you're young, there are seasons to life. And
Yes.
there is a season when it's appropriate to put your head down and grind a bit to get ahead. The problem becomes that season never comes to an end. And I think you have to be deliberate about it. You have to say, look, I'm going to put my head down in my 20s for a few years to get ahead, but I'm going to do it as a means to an end, not as an end in itself. A lot of guys never step off what I call the hamster wheel. And the problem with the hamster wheel is you can run faster and faster, but it just spins faster. You don't really get anywhere.
It just keeps going and going. Yeah, man. Before we sold our business last year, I had a call with one of my best friends, and I was like, dude, everything is going amazing, but like something just feels off. I couldn't like pinpoint it. Again, I've been doing a lot of the personal development work. Like my life was awesome. I really had nothing to complain about, but I knew we were selling the company. And he was like, well, have you ever thought about hiring a coach? And I was like, I don't need a coach. We hung up the phone. I called him back 10 minutes later. I was like, hey, can I actually use your guy? And he put me in touch with his guy, and he helped. But like everything we did was just basically identity work and just getting a lot more clear on like what my life, my ideal end state looked like. And it helped, dude. It helped so much because I knew the business was coming to an end. I was very attached to it from an identity perspective. I still view myself as an entrepreneur, but like, I think if I didn't do this kind of stuff, because again, I know people who have sold companies, and like, dude, I literally know a guy who had a 10-figure exit and he was miserable. And I'm just like, but he's never done any of this kind of identity work. And like, he was just on the hamster wheel, and then it just sort of exploded and he didn't know what to do with it himself. And I was just like, it's insane. And so, but that stuff really helped me. And yeah, I know we're just keep hammering on this point, but it's just so important, man. I think it's honestly, I mean, you can do all the external stuff, but like if you're not doing the internal work, like, dude, the external stuff it doesn't matter. I don't know.
And I always say, whatever you do, be deliberate about it. Like, be strategic about it. And I think that's The only real regret I have in my life is, like a lot of guys, especially in my generation, which is Gen X, I did just what society told me to do, what I thought was winning. And I never questioned it, never thought about what is success to me, Kevin Dahlstrom, as an individual. And that eventually gets you into trouble. So it's okay, again, to put your head down and grind for a bit, but do it deliberately, do it understanding that's a season that can come to an end. And what are you looking to get out of it?
So good right there. Okay, I got another tweet of yours pulled up, which is actually like 55 tweets in one. It's almost like 9 million views on
Yeah,
Twitter right now.
It's crazy, man. I got DMs from like some celebrities and got invited to all these shows, and it kind of took over Twitter for a few days. It was my 55th birthday post with like just 55 things I've learned, and some of them were like super simple tactical things, and some of them were more philosophical.
That's so cool. But it's crazy because, again, you were just talking about how you were, you became writing or started writing when the pandemic happened. But like that one, tweet that you did on your birthday, like it definitely helped me a lot. But like, again, so many people, which I think that's super cool. Like, and the internet's so awesome. Again, that's how we're doing this right now.
So one thing I want to mention is, like, I always tell people, like, I think everybody should write or produce some sort of content like you're doing with this podcast. And the way I think the right way to approach it, in my opinion, is you do it for yourself. All of my tweets are notes to self. So I do it for myself, but if anybody else reads it and gets value from it, that's like gravy on top. And over time, if you keep at it, that starts to snowball. And now I still write first and foremost for myself, but I get this massive bonus of, everything I post, tens of thousands of people read it, and I get all this amazing feedback, and I get these stories from people about how it's impacted their life. And man, what an amazing gift.
Love it. I 100% agree with that. I'm actually, with this new venture that we're starting, I want to document it more from like, 0 to where I want to take it. And I wish I documented more just for myself to have, for maybe my kids one day to have something to look back upon, but it's really just for me, and then I can post it. And if whoever wants to watch it and tune in and maybe get something out of it, that's cool. But it's really for me, and it's about having fun. And I think I definitely agree with like this podcast. It's me and Nick did it just for fun. The stuff I write is pretty much just to me. Sometimes I sort of frame it as like maybe some advice, but for the most part, it's just like a thought popped into my head, tweet. It's not like anything's really super planned. It's just like sort of conscious spur of the moment type of stuff. But yeah, no, I totally agree there. So let's dive into the mega tweet that went pretty viral. I've got like 10 that I liked, and we'll just riff on them, man. So I have number 4 for my first one. And I think this is pretty simple, but I really resonated with it. And so you said, if you have a positive thought about someone, don't keep it to yourself. Share it immediately. Encouragement defies the laws of physics. When you give energy, you also receive it.
Some of this goes back to, there's like an old rule of thumb that humans need to hear 7 positive comments to balance out every negative comment we hear. And as we all know, in the age of social media, especially, we're just constantly bombarded with negativity. That's the downside of social media. It's comparison game, it's FOMO, it's straight up like toxic, negative people. There's very rarely a circumstance where you need to say something negative. I'm kind of a believer in being relentlessly positive. People need more encouragement. So definitely, just a nice little day-to-day hack you can implement, which is what I mentioned in the tweet, is, how you're going about your day-to-day life and you're thinking about someone and you just have like a positive thought. Stop and just send them a text. Say, hey man, hey Justin, was thinking about you. That was a really fun podcast we did today. Matter of fact, I just did that this morning with my kids, which I think if you have kids, you need to be especially focused on this. What I like to do with my 2 girls occasionally, and they're in college now, so I don't see them all the time, is I'll go into my camera roll, which has, I mentioned earlier, I have thousands and thousands of photos, and I'll pull like some old pictures of me and them, and I'll just text them to them. It's just a little way to send positivity and love. The world needs a lot more of that, man.
I agree. My mom does that with me all the time. Like she did that the other day. It was just a picture of me and my brother from like when we were kids, and I thought like just in our baseball outfits. I thought it was pretty cool. But yeah, no, I 100% agree, man. I think there is unfortunately a lot more negativity, and like you said, for every negative comment, you got to reinforce with 7 positive ones. And I think it's probably even more than that, unfortunately. But I totally agree. I think we need more positivity. I'm definitely a realist, but I definitely lean more toward optimism because like the other is just like it does nothing for you, honestly. And if you focus on that too, it's like you just make yourself miserable, and that's again no fun.
That's right. Well, yeah, as they always say, the problem with being a pessimist is that even if you're right, it's a shitty way to live.
Yeah, 100%, 1,000%. That's so funny. Okay, so let's go to the next one. I thought this was a little bit more philosophical, but I liked it a lot. So you said, let go of resentment. When you forgive someone, you release the prisoner, and the prisoner isn't them, it's you.
That's a powerful statement. When you forgive someone, you release the prisoner, and the prisoner is not them, it's you. The irony of resentment is, you think you have this burning desire to just like get revenge or have justice, and it only burns you up. And so getting to a place where you can truly forgive someone, it's incredibly liberating. Like you'll feel that weight lifted from your body immediately. You call up someone that you have a beef with and just say, "Hey man, let's just put this thing behind us. Like I forgive you. I don't want to hold on to resentment anymore." You will be shocked at how that will transform your life in minutes.
Yes, I've experienced that myself. I had a buddy of mine who I thought I was pretty close with, and turns out he sort of just did some things that I didn't agree with, and I had like this grudge against him for a little bit. But then eventually, like, I was just like, this is way more on me than it is him. And I just texted him. I was like, dude, I'm good either way. If you want to talk, we had like a little conversation. We still don't talk anymore, but I feel way better since I did that. And I was just like beating myself up. I'm like, why am I doing this? It's 100% me. He's probably not even thinking about me. I'm thinking about this way more than I should.
Well, yeah, and a variant of that might apply in your case is setting boundaries. Like you don't have to make amends with every single person you have conflict with. Sometimes just setting boundaries is enough. A good example in my life was the only bad experience I've ever had in business was years ago. An employee actually extorted me, which was just blatantly illegal. And what made it worse was this was someone who I considered to be a friend. And so I'm never going to go back and like make amends for that. I just don't have the desire. But I set a clear boundary, like, and just like they're no longer a part of my life, not somebody I even think about anymore. And, if you can't completely forgive, at least set boundaries for your own sanity.
Love it. Okay, let's move on to the next one. We got a Tolstoy quote here, which I love. You said, stop doing some dumb things. And you went into the Tolstoy quote. You said, people try to do all sorts of clever and difficult things to improve life instead of doing the simplest, easiest thing, refusing to participate in activities that make life bad.
What we're talking about here is self-sabotage. And what's funny is self-sabotage is the bigger limiting factor for most people, much bigger limiter than not knowing what to do that's so smart. Like we tend to focus, especially on social media, you've got the Hormozis of the world telling you all the smart things you can do to build your business or build your life. The first thing you need to stop doing is stop digging a hole. Just stop doing dumb things that take you backward. That is step one. If you just do that, you're going to end up with a pretty okay life, even if you don't do all these smart, spectacular things. Nobody talks about that side of the coin. Like we only like to talk about all the smart strategies and tactics, but never like just stop doing stupid shit.
I had a mentor of mine a long time ago tell me like the very same thing. He's like, dude, it's not like, and we weren't talking about me, but we were just talking about like, I think we were in a cohort of probably like 5 or 6 young guys, and my mentor, he was just talking about how to become more successful. And he was just saying like, it's not that I'm doing things that you guys aren't doing. He's like, I'm just doing things that, or I stopped doing things that you guys are doing. So he's like, I don't stay up past 11 p.m. drinking and going to the bars every Saturday night. I don't do drugs. I'm not just, mindlessly doom scrolling. And it's just like when you stop doing all the stuff, you have all this free time. It's like, oh, instead of doom scrolling, I can read the book, or I have more time to work on my business, or I have that time to do Kevin's ideal end state exercise. But like, yeah, again, so many people are just doing so many things that if they just quit doing that, the rest of their life would get way better. Then you layer on top of some of the things that can actually really improve your life. And it's like, you're way ahead. And it's just, but you're right. No one does talk about the stuff that we need to stop doing.
The highest probability path to having a great life is to do ordinary things extraordinarily well for a long period of time. And it's not sexy at all, but it will guarantee success. And yet most people will not do it because they'll sabotage themselves.
There's a lot of self-sabotage in this world. And fortunately, it's not hard to see for yourself. Sometimes it takes someone like Kevin to point out your blind spots and be like, dude, you got to stop doing that, I mean, that's how it
and it's not even the big things. Like when we think about self-sabotage, we think about like the spectacular, stupid moves. It's little things like, I'm going to pick on something you mentioned, which is, drinking. I stopped drinking a couple years ago simply because there's literally nothing good about drinking. Like everybody has their arguments. They'll defend it to the death, but on the net, it's a negative on life. I don't want to do anything that's a negative on life. There are better ways to lubricate conversation, like walking or hiking. There are better ways to have a good time. And so that's a simple thing. And by the way, that simple example, which is alcohol, has ruined countless lives. So the evidence is all around us.
So many lives. I think if you look at like the prison stats, it's like 60% of all of the incidences are like alcohol related or like some sort of like, drug related. But I stopped drinking, I think it was probably 6 or 7 years ago. And I 100% agree. I think there's a lot more cons than there are pros to drinking. There's like zero pros in my opinion. I have so many hot takes about drinking. I don't know if we want to get into those right now, but yeah, I agree. It's like if you even just stop that, it's like, oh wow, I have like my Friday night again. I actually have my Saturday and Sunday again because I'm not hungover anymore and I actually feel good. Like I can go work out and then that starts to compound and then it's just like you're a whole new person.
The second order effects. And this is another thing that nobody talks about. So when you stop drinking, there's the first order effects, which are you're not getting drunk, you're not doing stupid things while you're drunk, you're not hungover. But then there's the second order effects, like all of a sudden now I wake up earlier and now I'm more motivated to go exercise. And so as you mentioned, those things start compounding.
Yes, 100%. I think that's again back to listening to people's advice that you don't want holistically, like their life. Like you listen to one part of their advice that they might give you if you don't want the rest of their life. That's the second order consequences of that could be crazy, which unfortunately is happening all over the place. But we won't go back there. We got some more awesome tweets to dig into. So it's about regret. You tweeted, if you ask old people about their regrets, they'll talk about the things they didn't do, the shots they didn't take, more than the things they did. Most people don't take enough shots. What do you mean there?
Heavy bias toward action. And this is another huge problem in society. Many more people suffer from the consequences of not taking action than taking an action that backfired on them. We tend to be hyper risk averse. We magnify the risk of making a bold move. We underestimate the upside of making a bold move. And I talk a lot about placing asymmetric bets. An asymmetric bet is one where the realistic downside is contained, but the upside is unlimited. A really simple example would be, exercising, right? It's like the downside of spending 30 minutes 4 or 5 times a week exercising is essentially nil. The upside is that it changes your life. Posting on X or Twitter, the downside of me starting to write daily on X back in 2019 was very low. Worst case, nobody ever reads it and I get better at writing. The best case is I end up with, a tweet that's read by 8 million people and changes people's lives. So take the shot, shots on goal, ask that girl out, basically have balls.
Let's fucking go. I mean, I 100% agree, man. I think there's so much, just with the amount of information everywhere, it's just analysis, whatever they're saying is like analysis paralysis. I forget whatever it is, but like, it's crazy, man. So many people are just like, oh, I'm scared of this. I'm like, well, have you even done anything yet? And they're like, no. I'm just like, well, what the fuck? Like you're just living in your own head and making life so much worse. Like go do the thing. You're going to figure out very quickly, oh, maybe sucked a little bit, but like I'm still alive. And then no one's going to really care and you're going to go about your day. And then you might even forget about it a week later. It's like, but so many people don't do that. And it's like, you don't gotta, again, like you said, it's not like saying quit your job and like do anything crazy. It's a calculated risk. And I think that's what makes a lot of successful entrepreneurs successful is they do calculate that, but then they are also taking the risk. Most people are just stuck in calculating and never do the action part.
The bigger risk is not doing anything. That's how you guarantee failure. And the other thing is, most people will never make bold moves. So if you're willing to overcome that fear and make bold moves, it's the easiest way to set yourself apart from the crowd.
Yeah, I think especially now more than ever, honestly. I mean, there's so many resources, so many even dude, AI nowadays, it's like, it's absolutely insane. Like the excuses, there should be no excuses. You can do so much more than any of our ancestors could ever imagine. And it's like with like less than half the effort, a lot more resources to back you up and to make amazing things happen. But at the same time, yeah, if you're not going to even take the next step, that's the biggest risk of all.
One of my favorite sayings is choose your hard. Like you can just deliberately do hard things, which is hard, or you can face the consequences of inaction, which is also hard.
Love that one too. Okay, so next one we talked about, or we're going to talk about, is a little bit about retirement, but it's not really about retirement. So this is number 44 on your list of 55. You said, the goal is not to retire and do nothing. It's to build a great day-to-day life that you don't need to escape. A life of leisure is a slow death. Happiness isn't possible without a little struggle, uncertainty, and skin in the game.
A buddy of mine on X the other day, a guy named Michael Girdley, he posted something and it said something like, I think the sweet spot is to have enough money to have control of your time, but not so much that you don't feel a little hungry. And I think that's exactly right. Is we have this misguided idea of retirement, which is that, you work really hard your whole career and then suddenly one day, age 65 or whatever, you stop doing anything at all and watch TV for the rest of your life until you die. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I think of it more as a slow transition where when you're young and just getting started, you have very little control over your life. So you have to do what you have to do to, provide for your family, to get ahead, whatever. But the goal is slowly you gain control of your life so that your entire day, by the time, let's say you're my age, 55, now your entire day is filled just with stuff that you choose to do, not that you have to do. You literally start dying when you stop doing hard things, whether it's physical or mental. And so I want to do challenging work. I want to do physical things. I want to do fun things like this podcast. I just want to do it on my terms. That's as good as it gets. And, I'm happy to say I'm living that now. Like literally, it's never perfect because we all have obligations, but like now that I'm an empty nester, like 80% of my day is doing things that I choose to do. And guess what? Part of what I choose to do is pretty hard business stuff where I have skin in the game and it's a little scary. It's uncertain, but that's part of growth and part of being alive.
I'm curious, what is your day like? Look, obviously it's going to be different day to day, but do you have like a weekly sort of routine schedule?
Yeah, I get asked this a surprising amount. It's a great question. So I'm going to give you my normal answer because I'm living in abnormal times. Anyone watching this on video can see that I've got my arm in a cast right now. I just had a pretty major surgery on my right arm. So my life looks very different right now. But generally, I start my week by looking at the calendar and the weather forecast and picking the days that I'm going to go climbing based on weather. So to me, right off the bat, that's an enormous luxury. I get to pursue my passion of rock climbing. I live, I'm looking out the window right now at the rocks and I get to pick the best days of the week to go climbing during the week when nobody else is out there, which is a huge luxury. And then everything else gets filled in between that. So my work calls, I'm a minimal meeting guy. So I rarely have more than 3-4 meetings a week, but I'm hyper responsive via asynchronous communications, whether it's Slack or email or text. That's how I do most of my work. I like to work independently on my own. I do a lot of creative work, typically bias heavily toward yes when a friend reaches out to me and says, hey, you want to grab lunch? You want to go do this? Or even when someone like yourself says, hey, you want to record a podcast? I try to bias toward yes. And, I'm fortunate that I've built a life that has enough open space where I can say yes to these things.
Yeah, well, you also, you did the work and intentionally created it, and you and Jesse are speaking the same language. He also is like, I schedule my fun first, then my family time, then my work, and like obviously it sort of sounds crazy, like at least to most Americans, probably they're like, well, I gotta work and I gotta do all this stuff, but it's like, have you even planned out, like even if you do have like a 9 to 5 job per se, have you planned out like something fun for the week? Like, are you even doing something fun every day that you enjoy? Like one of my other buddies, Devin, he's always like, dude, you gotta at least feel like a kid again every day, whether that's going skateboarding or surfing or just like going for a run or hanging out with your friends. But like so many people have lost like just like having fun. I think fun is so underrated, even for business. Just asking yourself, how can I make this more fun? But like no one is doing, not no one, but most people are not doing that with their day-to-day lives. And it's just like, we're just losing the fun and joy out of things. And then you look up and it's like, oh shit, I've just been working this whole time. And then you fall into that cycle and then you just living that life that you didn't really want, but you never scheduled the fun stuff into your calendar, dude.
Yeah. It's important to point out that, I'm 55 and it took me a long time to earn this. This isn't a birthright. Like I get a lot of young guys who come to me and they say, ooh, I want your life. And I'm like, well, all it's going to take is 30 years of hard work.
Yeah.
The point is like, it'll never happen if you're not deliberate about it. So that's why that ideal end state exercise I mentioned earlier is so important. Define the life you want and then align your actions. Do things that move you closer to that. To our point about self-sabotage, don't do things that move you away from that. And you'd be surprised what a couple decades of hard work can get you.
Do people ever hit you up to like mentor them or coach them?
Countless. And I don't think I would be a good coach. I don't have the patience for it. And honestly, that's not a leveraged use of time. I've considered it a few times because I had so much demand. That's just not a leveraged use of time because it always requires one-to-one communications. And I actually prefer to do stuff like this, where in theory, this podcast we're recording could be seen by hundreds of thousands of people. So I like to do things that have leverage, and that's just not a good leveraged use of my time.
Fair. Or when Kevin heals up, if you want to work with him, maybe you can go rock climbing with him, and that's the way you could probably do it, or something like that. That'd be pretty sweet. I'd be down for that.
Even that, like, you'd be shocked once you have like a decent following on social, the number of requests. I had to get better at saying no, because I am a guy who biases. I'm generally willing to do a call or a Zoom or meet up with someone, but it started to fill up my calendar. And so I have had to get way more selective about it.
Oh, I'm sure. Okay, so we got two more here that I really liked, and we'll wrap it up. Number 53 on the list, you said money comes and goes. Time only goes. Audit your calendar ruthlessly, cut the trivial, double down on the meaningful, and spend your hours like your life depends on it, because it does.
Yeah. So I gave a lecture to the business school at UC Berkeley last week, and I talked about the concept of being a time billionaire. And, a billion seconds is about 30 years. So anybody that's like 50 or younger, you're a time billionaire. And that is your most valuable asset. You're actually wealthier than Warren Buffett. And when I say that, people almost always roll their eyes. They're like, whatever, like it's a clever idea, but I certainly don't feel like a billionaire. But there's a real litmus test we can apply to this so Warren Buffett, famous investor, he's worth something like $140 billion, but he's 97 years old. Would you trade places, Justin, with Warren Buffett if you had to be his age? Of course not.
No.
But Warren Buffett, I guarantee you, would give all of his $140 billion back to be your age, Justin. What that says is time really is our most valuable resource, but we tend to give away time. We like hoard money and then give away time. And it really should be the opposite. We should be much more focused on investing our time well.
Yeah, I think that's such a great exercise too, just like maybe even bring you back into the present moment, because that's such a good little example right there. It's like you can have all these awesome goals and want to make all this money, which I do, but I know when I'm Warren Buffett's age, or even when I'm 80, I'd give it all away just to be where I am right now, which makes me a lot more present and grateful, which, I mean, again, that's really all you have at the end of the day. But these last two are probably my favorite. That's why I'm saving them for last year. But yeah, I thought that one was awesome. So cool. Let's get to the last one then, which was also really, really good. You said reinvent yourself every decade. Over time, we slowly drift off course from our priorities, values, and true identity. Don't be afraid to hit the reset button.
Yeah, it's almost like, I'm trying to think of an analogy, but like think of like a sailing vessel that's been out to sea for 5, 7, 8, 10 years. And, it kind of just gets in disrepair, right? It's got barnacles, it's dirty, things are starting to break. Inevitably, they call it a refit when you take a yacht out of the water and like rethink everything, modernize it. And I think we need to do that with our lives as well. Like if you just kind of do the same thing forever, inevitably you kind of get stuck in a rut and you collect baggage and things get complicated. And I think sometimes like it's hard to break away from that incrementally. Sometimes you have to make crazy moves or do a radical reset, which is what I did in 2018. And frankly, now that we're empty nesters, my wife and I are contemplating another radical reset. I think if nothing else, it's a super valuable exercise. And so I actually recently added something to my ideal end state exercise. And this would be a good one, a good question to leave your listeners with. So the ideal end state, basically you bullet point out, what would your ideal life look like? And then I think it's important to ask a follow-on question, which is, what would the radical plan to get there look like? It's one thing to like bullet point out and describe your ideal life, but then a lot of people tend to just kind of put it on the shelf and assume, okay, that's going to take decades to get there. Well, what if you did something really radical? And even if you don't pull the trigger on those radical moves, it's a very interesting thought exercise to at least challenge yourself on what the radical moves would look like. And you might come up with an idea. It's like, oh man, I should move to Boulder. Why am I living in Dallas? I don't know. And so always consider the radical plan is kind of the final thing I'll leave your listeners with.
No, that's awesome. I think that's super. You hit on a good point there because again, it's cool to like make the goals, and I think it's very important get specific with them, but not reverse engineering them and actually breaking it down to like, okay, now what do I got to do to get there? And I think the funny thing is about the whole process, at least it was for me, is like you're actually so much closer than you think you are. It might just be one meeting away, one connection away. Like it might just be a year away to like, holy shit, like I'm actually living my dream life now. It's like, whoa. But again, I think the problem with it is like you think it's so far away, so you don't act on it. And if you actually just realize it's actually a lot closer, you'd start to act on it a lot more, you know?
Yep. Well, and I think there's a quote related to this that I really like, which is your life will expand or contract in proportion to your courage. And it really is that simple. Is if you never take risk, if you play it safe all the time, you're going to have a small life. If you make a habit of taking calculated risks, placing asymmetric bets, you're going to have a big life.
Freaking facts, man. Well, dude, this was amazing. I mean, anything else you want to leave the people with? Obviously, at the beginning, I'm like, yo, y'all got to go follow Kevin. I'm telling you, like, this is just a little bit. Again, we didn't even, this was like 10 of the 55, and that was just his most popular tweet. He's still, a lot of his other tweets are equally as awesome. This one was just most popular. I thought it could be a great episode, but he's a really good follow. Is there anything about your business that you want to mention before we get out of here?
Well, first of all, if people want to follow me, go to X, formerly Twitter, and my handle is Camp4, CAMP, and then the number 4. It's a rock climbing reference. And then, yeah, I don't really have anything to sell or push, man. I have a great life, but I started a men's health business recently called Bolt Health. You can check it out at bolt.health. Maybe we can do our next episode can talk about men's health, which is another topic I'm passionate about.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually just talking about men's health with my tennis coach the other day. So that could be multiple episodes in of itself for sure. But Kevin, I really, really appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks for the time. And yeah, you guys go follow Kevin. You're not going to regret it.
Fun as expected.